hosting us as far as the walkthrough and the intro to the Tech Talk series. Super excited to walk through this with everybody today. And yeah, as Kelsey had mentioned, feel free to put any questions through the chat. I'll do my best to kind of peek in there and answer a couple as we're walking through. I will also do my best to jam pack as much here on the front end, the front 45 or 50 minutes or so, to leave us enough time to talk and walk through, as much as possible, really, on the tail end. So just a quick confirmation. Can everybody see my screen okay? Kelsey, can you still see the screen all right?
I sure can. I think everybody else can too.
Okay, perfect. Well, that sounds great. And just so we're all on the same page for the call, I did have maybe just 4 or 5 quick slides that I really wanted to be able to walk through. I'm not sure what, to any extent, the folks on the call have experience with salsa or know of salsa or anything like that. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of background into us as a company and to some of the things that are included, right, when a new client comes on board, meaning client success items. And then from there, we can kind of hit the ground running and jump into the actual platform itself. All right, so as far as us here at Salsa, so we've been around since 2003, so 17 years now. Right around 3,500-ish nonprofit groups that are our current clients and using the the Salsa platform. Around 10,000 users amongst our client base, and really all different shapes and sizes of the groups that I'll talk with. Although Salsa is certainly designed to be a very scalable solution. So while most conversations I'll have with groups are, maybe they're using something and are looking to improve upon their, technology stack or integrate their technology stack, maybe 10, 25,000 or so records. At the same time, very large groups like a Toys for Tots with hundreds of thousands of records using the same platform, and hoping that that scalability will come across so far as when we're walking through the actual platform today. And the reason I think we've been around for so long, have so many clients, they're of course successful with using the platform. A lot of different metrics and numbers here on this slide, although I would say that the 2 most important, at least in my mind, Salsa clients average a 28% annual increase in donations against an industry average of around 4%, right? And a 74% donor retention rate against an industry average of around 45%, 40 to 45%, depending upon what studies you're looking at, just to highlight a couple of those. And I'll actually show you once we get into the system how you can see live in real time, your donor growth, your donor retention rates in our dashboard. So there's going to be a handful of different metrics I'll walk through when we jump in. But like I mentioned, in addition to the platform itself, there is a lot of time and money that we put into making sure that our clients are successful, getting up and running, using the platform efficiently, right? So really 3 key components to how Salsa approaches client success. And so this begins with what we call Salsa Smart Start, which is essentially our onboarding program or sort of hand-holding mechanism, if you will, where we will pair you with an onboarding specialist, and they'll work with you to be able to build out some of your initial content, meaning your online donation form or different email blasts, newsletters, email series, those different sorts of things, but also just ongoing one-to-one individual coaching as we're getting you up and running. All right, so that's really the first step towards making it successful. But beyond that, Salsa Scholars is also completely included, and what that is it's more hands-on product training. So interactive online classes and courses. You can train at your own pace and get certified on Salsa. And then last but not least, support completely included too. So phone, email support, 8 to 8 Eastern time, Monday through Friday. So all those things are included with every Salsa package. Okay, and then just the last slide, really just to frame up what we are about to walk through, right? So when we talk about Salsa as a platform, there's really 2 key components to our system, and those being exactly what you see there on the screen: Salsa Engage and Salsa CRM. And exactly what they sound like. So Salsa Engage is covering all of your online engagement. So we really are a complete solution. So on that side is going to be all of your email blasts and marketing. marketing automation in the form of any kinds of, say, like drip campaigns or email series, different things along those lines. Online forms as well, of course. So your donation pages, I'll walk you through a couple examples of some clients' pages today. Peer-to-peer fundraising, event registration, and those sorts of things. And we have recently, over the past 6 months or so, introduced some other communication options via texting, and that's both broadcast texting, like anybody you have a mobile number for, and text to initiate, text give to 12345, that sort of a situation, and the form would ping it back, and we'll touch on that towards the end. But all of that information, everything we're doing online, all of that is syncing back into Salsa CRM. Right, so very much your database of record where we're housing all of our constituent records, reporting on all that information. Also, any kind of offline gifts, checks, cash, the records of those transactions we can enter straight into there. You can pull lists for direct mail and different things along those lines. So from there, if nobody has any sort of initial questions, I'm going to go ahead and change my screen. And we will start on the Salsa CRM side of things. I'll sort of walk you through what a constituent record looks like. We'll walk through reporting options and different things along those lines. And then from there, we'll bounce over to the engage portion. Really going to try to, like I mentioned, jam as much functionality into the time that we have. But certainly feel free to chat through any questions you have as we're walking through this. All right, so welcome to Salsa. And more specifically, welcome to my dashboard or login screen here within Salsa CRM. And really just, the first couple of things that I'd like to be able to point out initially, the system is completely cloud-based. So of course you will have an unlimited number of users. We're not charging you like per license or per seat or anything along those lines. And since each person will have their own login into the system, you can completely configure what each user will see upon logging in. So for instance, in my case, I have, say like my donor detail report hosted here initially, some personal notes that I've left for myself, where we're at to our goal with maybe a specific fund or campaign or appeal. You can drag and drop these things around, take things out you don't care about, right? So each one of those will be configurable per each user. And then just to sort of give you the lay of the land before I start jumping around here too much, that bar that you see at the top of the screen is what we refer to as the navigation bar within Salsa. So, that's where we're going to be able to do things like managing our favorite constituents or people you might be reaching out to pretty regularly that you want to have hosted at a glance. And we'll come back to our buddy George Clooney here in just a bit. The manage dropdown itself will get you to each component of the CRM. So whether that be searching on batches of donations or just constituent records, we do have a very robust moves management portion of our platform built in. So if different groups are approaching different processes in different ways, meaning perhaps we are tracking a grant, right? And we want to make sure that we are following up on the RFP and hitting the reporting requirements, those different sorts of things. Or for George Clooney, for example, we'll walk through a major donor cultivation process where we're wanting to make sure that, say, like important interactions aren't slipping through the cracks. Anywhere where you have sort of steps involved in a process where you want to have an end goal, will be a good fit for cultivation, and we'll walk through that together. And then as far as documents goes, so you can print labels straight to envelopes, label paper from Salsa. We do have some flexibility as far as word processing options go. In my instance, for example, I have our Google Docs integration turned on. So Google Docs has the capacity to live straight in Salsa. We'll come back to that. We do also have our own Salsa CRM word processor, right, for folks that are more comfortable with a more traditional processor. And then any hierarchy of revenue in Salsa is going to go through the following. So at the highest level will be your fund, underneath that campaign and appeal. And then I'll show you where that applies to in our reporting here in just a bit. Speaking of those reports, the three key types that I want to touch on. So, certainly our performance dashboards, that will be really visual reporting, different line graphs, bar graphs, pie charts, and those sorts of things. a whole suite of canned reports as well. So all the things that you'd expect to see, as far as donor detail, last year but not this year, some years but not this year, payment types. So some of those more built-in reports you may want to throw some filters into to customize. Or you can, of course, start from scratch and build your own. So once we jump into George's record, everything we'll walk through will be queryable, and you can construct and build your own queries to pull out the information that you want or need. Okay, so beyond that, if you hover over tools and if you click onto Salsa Engage, is going to be the main one here. Hopefully everybody noticed that that bumped open another tab there for me. So what that actually does, it just puts you straight onto the Engage side of the platform. Now I populated some test data here in this instance, and we'll come back over to Engage here in just a little bit. But all that to say, everything is single sign-on. You can toggle back and forth between each piece of the platform at any time. And then lastly, you can search on donations, add any gifts with our gift box and plus sign, manage your favorite and recent screens. What is the average? We had a question come through and it says, what is the average time frame to complete the Smart Start process? It is anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks on average to go through Smart Start. And some of that will depend upon how ready you are when you're coming with your assets to your meeting with your onboarding specialist. We will ask you to do certain things with creating content just so you're learning just so much as we are coaching you, right? So about 6 to 8 weeks for that. And there was a follow-up question to that which said, does Salsa work with QuickBooks? So we do have a QuickBooks Finance export built into Salsa, which will format the file for you to easily pull it over and have it be digested by QuickBooks. So yes, I would say a lot of clients using that successfully. And then the last question there, can you import data from our current CRM? Yes, so we have a few conversion options. Our standard conversion, which at its simplest, the simplest I can put it is that it involves just bringing over your contact info and historical giving. That would actually be included with onboarding and setup. And I would actually say the vast majority, 80, 90% plus of our clients opt for standard conversion just so they can ensure that A, they're getting set up quickly, but B, that they're not bringing over a bunch of junk, right, for lack of a better term, when they're making a transition to a brand new system. So yes, we'll bring over the data. We do have some more advanced options depending upon what your data looks like, which we call an enhanced or premium conversion, which would be a little bit more of a hands-on approach, but that would necessarily be on a case-by-case basis. Yeah, and great questions. Oh, and is the 6 to 8 week training online, in person, or via phone? It's going to be just like this, screen share sort of a situation. So the best sort of combination that we can give you, to give you that personalized approach, but help out as many clients as possible. All right, so from here, let's go ahead and let's just jump straight into a constituent record so we can walk through, what that looks like. And yeah, and then walk through some reporting from there. So of course, this is the constituent record within Salsa. And as a nonprofit CRM, it's going to track and manage all the details about your constituents and any interactions that you're having with them. So that will include all of your standard demographic and biographic information there at the top of the screen, but also any types of contact methods that we're tracking on that individual as well. So for George, I have his primary information hosted there at the top. If there is any sorts of additional contact info, not everybody is going to have multiple houses, but in George, she has a beach house and some of these different things, right? Perhaps more realistic folks might have a work phone, work email, and those sorts of things. And in addition to that, and speaking in broader terms, you can track organizations in addition to individuals within the platform. So maybe you have a sponsor for an event or a foundation you're hoping to earn a grant from. You could track those organizations as their own entity rather than creating some sort of workaround. And then any dropdown in the CRM, right? So anywhere you see an arrow on the side of the field, all of that is going to be completely configurable by you all as well. Okay, so if we come back in here, you'll notice in the top right, we do have George's constituent status. So I use George quite often for my demos. He's given us a bunch of money even just this year, but you'll be able to see his total giving lifetime into the organization, year to date, how much he has given. Now I have my system set up to flag anytime I've gone 90 days without a last personal contact. So it is changing it to an exclamation point there for me. And you could even track things like last activity. And even go so far as to add sticky notes to the main part of the screen. So if you do have maybe a colleague that's working in here, you just got off the phone with George, want to call something out for them, you can make sure that everybody knows what's going on. And then just some additional handy quick links here in the top. So if you're just on his record, maybe you need to add a donation, update the groups he's a part of, add a follow-up task, send him an email. All of those things can be quickly accessed. Okay, from there, if we scroll down on his screen, you can see his individual giving summary within here as well. So just, a visual representation, of course, of his donations over time. So, year to year, if he has, given more, upgraded, downgraded, lapsed, or returned. Breakdown of things like his first, last, greatest, and average gift amounts. And then for our fictitious donor, George here, he's not a recurring donor, although if he were, you'd be able to see what his next installment is set to process, if he owes us any pledge money, and then his year-to-date status. And then you can pull different things into the dashboard, meaning, maybe you're the grants manager, you don't care about giving, maybe you only care about cultivation, right? You can, edit your display settings. You can see the entire timeline of his activities with you all. So most of mine will say offline gifts, just because I'll key him in on a lot of these demos, but you can see if he signed up for, the newsletter or registered for an event, interacted with perhaps a Facebook lead ad, or, as a peer-to-peer fundraiser. For any groups doing advocacy, we do have an advocacy module where you can track like petition signatures, letters to legislators, those sorts of things, and all of that online and offline would get fed into his timeline or activity feed. And then just the last couple here. So custom fields, as the name would imply, entirely up to you, right? You'll want to determine, what custom fields you want on the main screen. Oftentimes if they're a little bit more sort of nuanced or in the weeds, you might want to just have them tabbed out here on the left, right? So some additional places to chuck your custom fields into, which are all going to be queryable. And then beyond that, cultivation. So, I alluded to cultivation earlier, and I just want to click in and just give you a quick example of what I meant by that. So for George here, in his case, right, there's a few of my colleagues that are responsible for cultivating this major gift. And each process that you create, right, so I've created a few just for, different organizations that we've worked with, that were, maybe some were working on an organizational sponsorship, or, maybe we're looking to retain a donor after we obtain a major gift. Each one will have its own unique set of phases. So for major donor cultivation here, in this case, I have quite a few phases, 17 of those, where I'm starting with identifying George as a new prospect, all the way down to sending him a personalized mailing, setting up a personal meeting, securing that gift and moving him over to, say, like major donor retention. You can set next actions from here, which will assign tasks to different, folks that are responsible for this process. You start date, target, end date. So in this case, we're hoping to bring in $10,000 as far as a major gift goes. You can track touches with this within here too. So I met George for coffee. He thinks he can give us $10,000 come December. And then this is kind of the drilled down view of what this looks like. But, although I'm not a major gifts officer, if I were, this is likely how I would use it, right? If I come in on Monday morning, I want to just know everybody that's in my major donor cultivation process that I need to give a follow-up phone call to. You can drill into everybody that's at that phase of the process. In this case, I have 7 or 8 folks, 2 of whom are overdue here at the bottom. So if they're overdue, they'll turn red. So it looks like we're starting to drop the ball here a little bit. Might want to follow up and see what's going on with Allison. So as far as the dashboard of your constituent goes, that's going to be the vast majority of what you'll see there. But these different tabs on the left are going to be more detailed bits of information about George. Now, I'm not going to click into them all. I'll click into the ones that I think are the most important, and I can kind of take it from there. So those being, of course, donations. So if you do want to see more in-depth donation information about George, it will give you a summary there at the top, but then also a breakdown of, when each gift has come in, the fund campaign appeal tied to each one of these donations. We already touched on activities. I'll skip ahead to groups. So groups is how you'll segment within Salsa. So, on the left are all of the available groups that I've created throughout the system. On the right are all the ones that George is actually a part of. And, you can see they're not mutually exclusive. So George has been with us for, 15 or so years. So he's a member of a bunch of these. And you can also set groups to be dynamic. Basically what that means is, maybe a major donor for one of you all is somebody that gives $5,000 in a year. The second that George perhaps hits that threshold, you can automatically become part of that group without you having to, physically add or remove people to or from it. Relationships, just as you'd expect, any links or relationships between George and different records. Bolded out means that those are organizational records versus individuals. And then at the bottom, householding is also built in. So, we aren't bombarding the Clooneys with, 4 direct mail appeals. Maybe we could just get something in the mail for the, say, Clooney family in general. Custom fields, some additional places to host those. Notes, right? So more in-depth notes. It will always timestamp your note, tag the author. You can customize your purposes, and then you can actually query on these. So how many phone calls did we make to, our major donor group in a specific date range? And then lastly, documents within here, completely unlimited. So there's no data storage limits or anything like that across the system. So if we're good here on the record, I think this would be a good spot to transition over to the performance dashboard, but feel free to chat any questions through as they come up. All right, so let's just jump straight into the performance dashboard, and let's start within our fundraising overview, right? So it will start you in the fundraising overview, although you can certainly drill into, say, particular funds, campaigns, or appeals if need be, or maybe we only want to focus our dashboard on a particular group of supporters. But again, it will put you straight into here, so you can see things like your fundraising performance year to year. And back to the question earlier, we'll transition over your historical giving. So, these dashboards and things, it's not like you're gonna have to be starting from scratch, right? At least as much as you have, we'll be able to transition over. As we scroll down, you can see a breakdown of, say, like revenue received by month. So you could click in and see, how we did in August of 2019 versus 2018, so on and so forth there throughout the years. And then we also do have a concept of annual giving levels baked into Salsa. So both the names and ranges with these are entirely up to the user. But we will always give you the donor count and revenue with these, right? So for example, in 2017, I had almost 3/4 of my donors at that bronze level. But that made up a very small percentage of the actual, say, like revenue that we brought in that year. But again, you could click in and see who these folks are, how long they've been a donor with us. If you want to, add them to a group or create a new group from here, you can edit all this information. And then as you click through these tabs, it starts to get much more detailed. So specifically year-to-date progress, say like our key performance indicators this year versus last year, revenue compared to the previous year, as well as numbers of donors, breakdown of things like online versus offline revenue, and then revenue by donation types, so how many are one-time, recurring gifts, matching or pledge payments. And then probably my 2 favorite tabs, fundraising initiatives, right? I think this is a big one with, nonprofit boards, or it's a development director, reporting back something visually in a board meeting, something along those lines. So recall earlier when I had said that the hierarchy is fund, campaign, and appeal, at least the nomenclature in Salsa, right? So perhaps that's your, annual fund, capital campaign, and I don't know, spring 2020 appeal. You can set your goal for each of these, see where we're at to our goal. You know, you again have a visual representation, both the bar graph, but if you click into this, a pie chart of what's going on with each of your appeals, you can click in and see exactly who donated to each one of them. You can print these reports, either the one-off, print the entire page, pull it as a CSV, if need be. And then also recall on that second or third slide, I mentioned our donor growth and retention. And while it's great that Salsa clients average a 74% retention rate, that doesn't really mean anything for for you as a user, right? So if you click into this donor growth and retention tab, you'll actually be able to see a breakdown of how much we're relying on new donors, previous, and folks that we've lapsed. So that first line there, new donors, the revenue from them, and the percent total that we're relying on these new donors versus folks that had given previously, and the money we received from folks that had given previously, and the amount of money and people that we've lapsed. And while this is some test data that we sort of loaded in here, just as sort of a fictitious example, you can see in 2019, we felt great. We were up $10 million, but we must have caught some really large gifts perhaps because we had started to fall off a little bit with the individuals we were engaging with. But you can click in, see who these people were that we lapsed in 2019, perhaps drop them into some sort of drip campaign or sequence to be able to re-engage them. All right, and I do want to leave us enough time to walk through the engage side of things, but I do want to just show one quick report, just so you guys can get a feel of some of the other data that can get pulled before we make that transition. So I'm just going to use our donor detail report here for our purposes right now, and let's just back this up a couple of years so we can get some solid data into the report. So if we were to say maybe Q2, at least Q2 of say like the calendar year in 2018, maybe we just wanted anybody that gave us at least $100 but not more than 1,000. You could certainly apply additional filters to this if you'd like. I'm just going to go ahead and run this report as is. But to actually use this information to edit your information, you'll be able to change this into what I call our spreadsheet view, which is formerly in Salsa called the advanced query view. I call it the spreadsheet view because A, it looks like a spreadsheet, and B, you can convert it to a spreadsheet if you'd like. But most of our clients are, of course, manipulating this data further. So you can move ahead and apply a global update to your records. Maybe we're adding or removing them all, say like to or from a group all at once, or maybe we want to add a note to everybody's record all at once in bulk rather than say like one by one. Or you could even drop these folks into say like a Salsa Engage email blast. So since everything within Salsa is going to be integrated, say we can run a very specific report on the CRM side, and then in real time what the system is doing here is just dropping us straight into a Salsa Engage email blast, right? So there's no needing to download or re-upload this into like a Constant Contact or a MailChimp, or to utilize some sort of like third-party integration in order to reach out to our supporters. All of this is going to be native Salsa functionality. So from here, I want to spend our last kind of 20 minutes or so on the Engage side, creating some content together. But I want to be sure that there aren't any specific questions before we start to stray away a little bit from the more CRM side of things. And if no one chats through, I'm just going to keep it rolling. Feel free to do so as we're obviously walking through. And let's jump straight into creating an email together. And I'll use this example since I already went ahead and built this guy out. So you'll notice that any kind of content you create through Salsa will follow a really similar left to right workflow where you'll start with the basics, move to the right from there. So in this case, internal name and description with your email. Yeah, you can assign your own message topics within here as well. So the reason I like to point that out, this will actually correspond to the supporters subscription center. So, maybe I used to live in town, I used to volunteer a lot, but I moved away. I can opt out of the volunteer emails, but still stay opted in to say like your newsletter, for example. And, while as I showed you, you could run a report and drop that audience into the Engage side. You can also do some other audience selection straight from the email workflow. Meaning, of course, you can send this to the entire list. Not something we typically recommend unless Obviously, everybody needed to know what's going on. You can select groups of your list. So any of those pre-existing groups you've built out, you can create those. Or you can actually just create a quick query straight from this interface, meaning, all these different criteria. Maybe we just wanted to send an email out to people that live within, say, like 50 miles of, and for whatever weird reason, we have a bunch of people in here that live within 50 miles of 90210. And then it's just simple and/or conditions from there. So, maybe we also want to say people that, live within 50 miles of 90210, but has also given at least one donation, ever, or something along those lines. You just build your sentences to basically inform your audience. And then from there, you can move along to create the email. So, we really designed this visual editor to be, as easy as possible, for the end user. So there's no like crazy coding or anything that you need to know. It is literally going to be, you drag and drop your elements in, and that's what the email is going to look like. So, if I want to, drag a logo in, make that larger or smaller, click my trash can icon to take it out of there. You can preview, say, like what your content is going to look like on different devices. So if you hit that preview button, it'll show you what it looks like on a, say, desktop, tablet, mobile phone. At least give you a general sense. Maybe that 3 looks way too big to us on a mobile phone. You can actually utilize some of our mobile specific styling. So we can make sure that, anytime somebody opens this email up on a phone, they're not going to see that giant 3. We don't want that to be the first thing. That comes in really, in handy a lot for donation pages, right? So you might want to have sort of your mission statement or a block of text if I'm looking at that on a laptop. But, if I have to scroll 4 times to get to the place where I donate, probably not the best, right? So you can, take that out if I'm looking at that on my iPhone. And then just some more, built-in best practices in terms of things like A/B split testing, right, are built in as part of the process, meaning, hopefully everybody has a general sense, but if not, you can test, whatever you'd like. I kind of took the easy way out here in my example, and I'm testing my subject line to hopefully increase my open rate. But, Salsa takes things a little bit of a step further. So you can choose your test group size. So in this case, I'm saying 10%. So a random 5 and 5% will get email A and B with those 2 different subject lines. But Salsa can actually run on autopilot for you. So again, I'm going off of open rate here, but after X amount of hours, days, minutes, whichever version of that email performed most successfully, Salsa can actually recognize that and get the most successful version out to the remaining 90% of the list. If there was something very specific you're looking to test, you can manually get alerted as well and send that out on your own, of course. Lastly, send yourself a test email. Send this out now, schedule this for later, pull up a calendar, type in a time you might want that to go off. So when you're ready to send your emails off, and after you do send them off, this get ready to send piece. So that will change to, say, see the results. And now I threw some test data here into my URL just because I think I sent this to 2 or 3 colleagues, and I wanted to pull some good data in here. But so some of the numbers might be at odds with one another, but you can see your conversion funnel of what was sent, delivered, open, click through, converted. Your split test results there at the bottom. Domains, so like Gmail, Yahoo, AOL, and as we click through, deliverability. Again, this is test data. We're running in the high 90s as far as deliverability into that supporter's primary inbox goes, which is, on average quite a bit higher than your point solution email providers. Open rates, what device this is opened up on, if that was a mobile phone, if that was an iPhone, or what app it was opened up on. If this was perhaps a newsletter, you'd be able to see, everybody loves Article A, but everybody hated, that thing we did in Article 3. That sort of a situation. And the other thing that I think really, starts setting Salsa, and the reason a lot of our clients, really enjoy having everything in the same place, is you can see your conversions from here too. So not just what each recipient did they open it or not, but you can see, that this email that I sent out at 3:39 on Tuesday afternoon, that brought in $250 for us, or it had 12 people sign our petition or register for an event. So you can actually see the impact of the the messages and communications that we're sending out. So that's your more typical emails in a nutshell. And as a reminder, we'll work with you for your first, couple of emails via that Smart Start process. And I guess the last thing I would say about this is we don't cap emails either. Oftentimes I'll see providers where, you can send out 10,000 a month or something like that, but then you're paying more. So these will be unlimited. And then the other piece that I mentioned or alluded to with email outreach is this concept of an email series or, true marketing automation. So, what you use as the triggering condition, for your email series will affect whether this is just an email series or, like true automation, right? So, if you have nothing in place now, we'll likely get you started with something like a welcome series, just so you can sort of get your feet underneath you and get the hang of how it works. Now, if you do have several series in place, maybe you're a little bit more, waist deep or a little bit more of a seasoned veteran with some of this automation. You can also use, say, like dynamic groups to trigger, specific drip campaigns and series flow. And apply a lot more dynamic logic to these, but we'll keep it simple for today's purposes, because we could honestly spend a full hour on this piece alone. But in this instance, I'm using my triggering condition as someone that has submitted a specific form. Although again, it can be, they made a donation, have become part of a group, and some of these things. Yeah, so the question, a question came through that had said, can you schedule emails to go out like you can in Constant Contact? And yes, here at the bottom, if you're clicking schedule for later, you could just select your date and type in the time that we want that to go off. All right, and then so back to the series. So again, with mine, I'm saying any new supporter who fills out our newsletter sign up page is going to get opted into this series. And from there, we'll be able to develop our series flow. So in my series, I'm saying here initially, after 2 hours, hey, get to know us, as our first introduction to the organization. A week later, right? So want to let them know, hey, we've gotten this, and we appreciate you signing up, but we don't want to bombard them with emails right away. So a week later, impact the world. 10 days after that, we're saying, hey, we need your help, and are finally making our action ask. And differing schools of thought with it, right? Usually not necessarily wanting to ask for any money in a welcome series, just trying to drive them up that ladder of engagement, so to speak. And this is about 2.5 weeks in between, when they signed up and when we're actually asking them to do something. So not doing too much too soon, but still striking while the iron's hot, since they're obviously interested, since they just signed up. And then, of course, you do get your aggregated series results and those individual messages results, just the same as what I showed you with your one-off email blasts. All right, and so from here, I do want to pivot slightly to forms, and realizing we have about 17 minutes left and want to leave some time for questions. I'll walk through a donation page, give you all a quick look at some other components that certainly I would recommend, but not everybody is doing, like peer-to-peer events, and we could touch on texting, and then we can kind of wrap things up from there. But certainly want to walk through the donation form. Yeah, so as far as another example, that we had another question come through that said, please give other examples of automated emails other than them signing up themselves online. So probably the best example that I could give is utilizing a dynamic group, right? So if we were to say, and let's just take a step back and create one together. So I mentioned earlier that you can create groups to be dynamic in Salsa. So if we are coming in and say re-engage 3, because I know I've created a lot of re-engagement groups, but you can create them to be dynamic, so they'll update as people fit the criteria that we're laying out. It will actually be that same query builder that we're using to create our one-off email blast. But maybe this is just something as simple as, like, somebody who has donated, maybe it's at least one time during the last, let's say, 6 months. and then you could say, and, has not donated in the past, say, 3 months. So the second that Ryan hits that 3-month mark of not having done anything, maybe it's not just a donation, maybe it's I haven't clicked on an email, or haven't done anything that you would consider a high level touch point, right? The second that I hit that 3-month mark of not having done anything, maybe now we want to change the entry trigger to anybody that becomes part of that group. Right, so anybody that has gone 3 months without doing anything, who's in our re-engage 3 group that I just created with you, they'll get pushed down their own path of, hey, here's what we've been up to lately, please come back. Maybe not that desperate, but I think you kind of hopefully get the point. So you can have those different triggering conditions, push people down different email paths. So hopefully that was a good example, or everybody understood that. All right, and then as far as coming back to the donation or fundraising form, same workflow left to right. Obviously, there's going to be a lot different here, but generally it's a start, your name and description. Now, again, everything that's happening online is filtering down into the database. So you're going to want to apply a fund campaign appeal to this page so you can report on that appropriately. So it affects your performance dashboard appropriately, right? When you are reporting on it on the CRM database side. And then again, we'll move along to compose the page or create our content. And without jumping around here too much, I do want to just show you one quick other thing here before we move on. So if you're starting fresh to create any of this content, you'll have these 3 distinct paths that you can go down. The first is to copy something you already have. So, for an email, maybe that's our newsletter. We don't have to recreate the wheel each month. We just want to build off what we had and change out the content. For a fundraising form, maybe we just want to update some of the language. Now you can use a pre-designed template as well. So our team, our marketing and client success team, very graciously last week pushed out a bunch of content in relation to Giving Tuesday now, right? So just different things that we're pushing out to our clients each month that regularly that we think look nice. You can choose to select that and change out your content, or you could start fresh, which is what I did here in my case. And then basically you just come in here to create your content and drag and drop. So it'll be a similar visual editor, although there will be more elements, right? So you can pull in, multi-step or a single-step donation form, different things along those lines. You can get very creative with your, donation. Obviously, you can make this recurring, ask them to cover fees, change any of the language with these. We also do have a really cool concept that I'll show you here of dynamic ask amounts or dynamic ask arrays. Whereas this is running off of what we call our next suggested gift amount, which is an algorithm that's running in the background of Salsa. But basically what it will do for you, it will recognize that supporter off of either a browser cookie or from their email blast ID. So when Ryan comes in here, maybe I'm good for my $10 a month and that's it, right? So my next suggested gift amount is $10. So the amounts that would be presented to me would be 5, 10, 20, 30, with 10 being pre-selected. Whereas maybe Kelsey is, 10 times the giver that Ryan is, and she gives $100, each month. It would say like 50, 100, 200, and have 100 pre-selected. And so we're not leaving any money on the table by only asking Kelsey for, $25, not over asking Ryan for 25 and scaring me off. So obviously there's a lot more that goes into that too. That also can be a text ID if you are utilizing broadcast texting to pass that parameter onto the page to make that dynamic ask. But some really cool things that you could do to present a more customized or tailored experience for each specific donor. So how this gets onto the website, you would just click to publish it. It would format these published details. Right, I've already published this one here in this case, and we'll work with you for your first page. So by and large, the vast majority of Salsa clients are embedding our pages. So you can utilize this form widget code and drop that onto your website, and it'll be embedded just like this, right? So it won't say anything about Salsa. It'll say your .org up in there, and say nothing about us on the page. I believe this one is a 2-step form. Yeah, so I'm selecting my amount, typing in my info, and donating. But really trying to keep the supporter in context throughout that whole process, not leading them astray or bumping open another tab or giving them any reason to doubt why they're donating, to hopefully lessen any kind of donation form abandonment. All right, and then everything else with this is what you'd expect. So a unique autoresponder for that page. Ryan, thank you for your donation. You all can set up internal email triggers. So, a popular one is, someone gives above X amount of dollars. So we want to give them a phone call, write them a letter, so we want to notify our ED immediately that someone just gave us $1,000 online, for example. But again, where we start tying everything together is you can see all the results of how your forms, anywhere where you're collecting data, how your forms have performed. So if I just throw some quick test data in, since no one has donated on my fake page, you can see all the results from this. So total donations over time, how many dollar amounts and numbers of donations from first-time and returning donors, large donations and averages, breakdown of your donation history. It's test data, so mine kind of looks like a polygraph here in this case, but you can see the breakdown there. And then even further, a breakdown of page views, conversions, new supporters, right? So it looks like Email Blast 2 did a great job at getting people to look at the page. But in terms of people that actually donated, a lot more got referred from an external website. So you can click in and see exactly where they're coming in from, if they're coming in through a specific social media platform, whatever the case might be. So I think as far as, kind of the core elements or core Salsa functionality, those are most of the key pieces that I wanted to touch on. And I do want to leave just a little bit of time here on the end for anything else. And I guess, the last things that I would leave you with, not necessarily going to be able to do some of this justice with, 5 minutes or so, but, peer-to-peer fundraising would be built in and included, right? So that's both, more and more, of course, we're seeing virtual events. Salsa has had several webinars on virtual events or how to virtualize your fundraising events here over the past, several weeks. So you can make events online only and have your fundraising goals. Or it can be your more traditional, hopefully, as things start to get back to normal, your more traditional like 5K run and walk sort of a setup where you have your fundraiser and team pages and that sort of a situation. In addition to that, of course, your more typical event registration and ticketed events would be included and covered within Salsa. And the last thing that I would just touch on would be, I think more and more, again, organizations are looking for ways to be able to separate themselves from some of all the noise out there. And I think everybody has probably gotten a ton of emails in relation to COVID and everything that's been going on as of late. So we have been seeing a market increase in Salsa clients utilizing text to sort of bridge that gap and to separate themselves. So something to consider, especially in the short term, but this is both text to initiate, all right, or text give to that specific number and it will ping back the page for them to, to say like donate through. Or this can be more so broadcast texting. So rather than just sending an email, which is fine maybe for most of our list, maybe we want to identify, the most engaged supporters that we have a mobile number for that we can then compose like a broadcast text option to sort of separate ourselves from, all the emails that everybody's getting nowadays. So, I think again at a high level, that's mostly what I was hoping to walk through, and I don't want to keep us over time, Kelsey. So
that was really great. I really appreciate that. Feel free to go ahead and start flooding the chat boxes with comments, whether it's on Facebook if you're watching or here in the Zoom. We've got one that just came in, the annual price for this CRM.
Yeah, as far as pricing goes, it is largely dependent off of your list size, the amount of names and records that you're tracking in the system. But generally, it'd be right around $349 a month to start for the entire system. And the other thing I would say with that, just keep in mind that all of that typical setup, startup costs, all those are bundled in. So we have what we call bundled pricing that just sort of builds all that into the subscription fee.
Okay, great. And then we have another question. Is there a separate cost for one-on-one customer service?
There's not, no. So all the client success, you can call up and talk to a human. Most of our support reps, or all of our support reps, are in our Pittsburgh office. Well, obviously everybody's remote right now, but yeah, regular people, ready, willing, and able to chat with you.
That's great. Do we have any other questions? I'm also checking Facebook, but so far, none. Okay, here we got a couple. Did you, bundle costs, do you mean you pay a flat fee up front and then you pay monthly?
No, what I mean by bundled price or bundled cost is normally what you'll see, you'll have like a conversion fee, like a fee to get set up. You know, if you want to have like premium support, you have to pay extra, right, for different providers. All that is included with Salsa. So, you know, our typical client is paying one fee annually, but there are options to pay quarterly or monthly as well. All right, and it looks like another chat may have come through.
Yes, she said, can we get Salsa to manage it for us in the same way we can get grant writing help? But I'm asking for a little more detail because I'm not sure exactly. I'm not very tech savvy either, Pamela, I promise. Let me actually unmute you, Pamela, and if that's all right, and I'll have you speak on that a little bit more.
It looks like a very good program, and I'm sure that we'd love to have it. It's just that it seems like it would need a full-time person just to manage this alone. To me, just watching, you know, there's so many platforms, so much to do that for our organization, which is a small clinic, it seems like we would need to have really a lot of help with just keeping up with all the various areas in this platform that we have to manage.
Yeah, so
what my concern.
Right, yeah. So, you know, what I would say, you know, we would certainly obviously help you with standing things up, and, you know, we can make an account manager available to you with, you know, one-on-one sort of coaching, strategy sessions, those sorts of things. And I don't think you need to feel, obviously I was trying to jam pack as much functionality as I could into, you know, the short time that we had today, but I don't think you need to feel like you need to use everything, you know, from day one. It's, you know, certainly a system that is designed to make your life easier. So you're not using like a, you know, like a MailChimp and then, you know, like a separate database and then something separate for events. So yeah, I mean, we'll do our best. If you did want some additional, you know, guidance or help, we can provide professional services on a, you know, a case-by-case basis. But I would say we can sort of take that offline and can explore that a little bit further to figure out, you know, where you all might need the most assistance.
Yes, Pamela, I can give Ryan your contact information and have him reach out to you to talk that through a little bit deeper, if that's all right with you. Perfect. Great. Are there any other questions we can get? We've got just a few minutes left before the hour turns and want to make the most bang for your buck. Okay, great. So if I had a problem while I was working in the system, can I just pick up the phone and call Salsa and speak to a live person who can walk you through the problem you're having?
Yep, that's it. That's exactly how it works. So we have, you know, it's the support line that's available to all of our clients. There's not like an extra fee or anything crazy you need to pay to be able to talk to somebody. You can just pick up the phone, give us a call, and they'll talk you through it.
You can tell they've had some experience with some other platforms that don't offer that service.
Right. Yeah, we have a little bit of a different way of sort of thinking about things. So, you know, again, with us, you have your one bundled rate and everything else would be included.
Great.
All right, guys.
Going once. Going twice. All right, well, with that, I want to say thank you, Ryan, so much for everything and giving us your time this afternoon. I appreciate all of you for coming to attend. We thank you so much for taking time out of your afternoon for our very first Tech Talk. And I look forward to seeing all of you tomorrow morning for our strategies to reduce stress, improve self-care, and reduce isolation at 11:30. You can register for that still on our website at ocalafoundation.org. Also, we'll be back on Thursday with Blue Moraine to discuss their product and tell you a little bit more about the donor management software world. Thank you so much, everybody, for being on this call, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelsey.
Bye.
Have a good one. Bye.
You too.